Disney's Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is finally changing to what it should have been all along. Hello everybody, welcome. Star Wars fans have certainly had their problems with the implementation of Star Wars at Disney's Galaxy's Edge, but these new changes could make things a whole lot better. Ever since Star Wars Galaxy's Edge opened way back in 2019, in both Disneyland and Walt Disney World, fans have had somewhat of a mixed reaction. What Disney thought for sure was going to be a massive hit and a massive success ended up just being sort of a mediocre reception, with some die-hard Star Wars fans even outright just dismissing it. Now, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is the same exact area in both Walt Disney World and Disneyland. They are literally identical experiences down to even the placement of some of the plants. The only real exceptions are the entry points. The entry points are in slightly different locations, but even those entry points and those gates are still there in both locations. It's just one gate will be open in one place and the other gate is just a fake gate. Disney thought that much about how successful Galaxy's Edge was going to be that they built the whole place twice. They did it 2 times. They were like, not only do we think it's so successful, this is going to be a great land, we think it's so successful that we're going to build it twice in 2 different locations in the same country. So I think they were really just shocked when it sort of fell flat. Now, it isn't a complete waste. It isn't a disaster. It's still a fine area of the park. It's a great place to go. There's lots of amazing things to do there, but I think from their expectations point of view, and I think some fans' expectations, it somewhat fell flat. Now, it certainly didn't help that the marquee attraction at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, Rise of the Resistance, didn't even open when the lands opened in either park. Both parks opened, and then Rise of the Resistance didn't come online until a few months later. So really all you were left with was the park experience, the land experience with Star Wars Smuggler's Run, which to most people is probably the weaker attraction in the 2 lands. I love that attraction. I think it's a lot of fun, but overall it's a lot weaker of an attraction than Rise of the Resistance. Once Rise of the Resistance opened, that definitely helped Galaxy's Edge be a bit more successful, and people really sort of, the positivity started to emerge a little bit more because that is just a world-class attraction. However, Disney's overall choice to lean into the sequel trilogy, out of the 3 trilogies, there's the original trilogy, then there's the prequel trilogy, and then there's the sequel trilogy. Disney's choice to lean into the sequel trilogy, which are the Disney versions of Star Wars, kind of threw a lot of people off. After all, that trilogy is probably the least popular trilogy of the 3 trilogies. The original Star Wars trilogy is largely considered to be, by most people, the best series of the 3 by far. It has a massively loyal and devoted fan base. Obviously, that spawned all sorts of spin-offs, all sorts of books, literature. The fans really just, the original trilogy is where it started. And there are so many devoted fans to Star Wars because of those 3 films. Now, the prequel trilogy is actually very interesting because when it came out, it was sort of dumped on, to be honest. A lot of people kind of dumped on it. Star Wars pure fans kind of dumped on it, turned their nose up at it. And it really wasn't until years later that the prequel trilogy kind of finally found its footing and people's love for it really started to emerge. And to this point, it's actually a very popular trilogy. People love a lot of things about it. Now, those 2 trilogies, as I just mentioned, those were created pre-Disney. This is pre-Disney takeover or pre-Disney purchase of Lucasfilms, which includes Star Wars, and that occurred in the year 2012. And at that point, Disney decided they were going to roll out their own brand new trilogy, which is the sequel trilogy, and then decided that they were going to build Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and theme it off of that sequel trilogy as far as that timeline goes. And they basically completely ignored the other two trilogies, the original and the prequel. They basically just threw those out and said Galaxy's Edge is going to be centered around the sequel trilogy. So fans of the original movies and the prequel kind of felt like that was a missed opportunity and a little bit of a slap in the face. The love for the Disney Star Wars movies is just not even remotely at the same level as the others. Most Star Wars fans really wanted to see the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy brought to life. So when you look at it, the question emerges, which is, so who was Galaxy's Edge really for? It certainly wasn't for the die-hard Star Wars fans, because again, they were really centered around the original trilogy and maybe the prequel trilogy. There are some die-hard Star Wars fans that also really love the sequel trilogy, but for the most part, it didn't seem like Galaxy's Edge was for like the die-hard Star Wars fans. So was it then for theme park fans? Maybe theme park fans. But then Star Wars as a land really wouldn't have been enough of a draw to just generic theme park fans to make a special trip out to go see Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, because they may not have been really even fans of Star Wars. So realistically, the target for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge ended up being this like much smaller segment of people that kind of overlaps between Star Wars fans and theme park fans, and it's right there in that cross section of who that was designed for, which is a much smaller number of people than you would think that they would invest and build this giant land into. So while the land was built and it has a lot of positive attributes, overall people kind of felt like it's a bit soulless, it's a bit empty, it just doesn't really have that nostalgia and amazing feel that you expect from the Star Wars universe. Promises of all these characters and interactions coming to life sort of fell short. There was a lot of budget cuts. The entire land was an invented, made-up area, Batuu, which is the Black Spire outpost. It was something that they created uniquely for that. That was not a location that was in any of the movies at all. And Star Wars fans, they want to see like familiar areas and iconic areas from the movie. If you're going to go see, you think about the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, you go to see those iconic areas from the movie. I don't think it would be near as exciting to go to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter that was just some random made-up town that wasn't in any movies, didn't have any connections to any of the characters, and it was all just sort of like original Harry Potter stuff. I don't think it would have nearly as much draw as what you have over at Universal, which is Hogwarts Castle, and Hogsmeade, and Diagon Alley, and all these iconic places from the film. People love to like live their favorite memories or their favorite moments from the movies. It's really kind of sad when you think about it that Star Tours, that older attraction that's been there forever, kind of ends up being the best thing about Star Wars at Disney's Hollywood Studios. It has the like Ewok village, it has a big giant AT-AT up top, it's got iconic characters and scenes and things and planets and stuff from the movies, and so a lot of people, like, even though the attraction isn't amazing, it ends up being one of my favorites because it's very nostalgic. But Disney, despite all the pushback, kind of the overarching failure that was happening, they stuck to their guns and they decided, we're gonna stick with this timeline, we're gonna go with the sequel trilogy, let's go. Now that timeline is specifically between the Last Jedi movie, so the second movie in the sequel trilogy, and Rise of Skywalker, which is the final movie in that trilogy. That small little timeline, that tiny little timeline between those two movies is where this entire Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is built off. Limiting much? I mean, you could have chosen a giant timeline like between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy and chose that timeline, or even chose a timeline after. There was a lot bigger timelines they could have played with to give themselves more opportunity to bring in different characters, iconic characters, new characters, could have bridged the gap. Instead, they chose that timeline, which I think is very limiting. Then they had the brilliant idea to create the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel in Walt Disney World, which obviously was a massive failure. That was pretty much doomed from the start. But for Walt Disney World, that really locked them into that timeline and trying to protect the sanctity of that experience and timeline with that Galactic Star Cruiser more so than the timeline in the version in Disneyland. Disneyland from the start has always been much much more forgiving on the timeline in their version of Galaxy's Edge. So you would see characters roaming Disneyland that you would never see roaming in Walt Disney World because they were so protective of the timeline. So once the Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel failed, eventually the Walt Disney World Galaxy's Edge started to show some signs of giving in and thinking maybe we should start bringing in some of the things that fans of Star Wars really would like to see. There was this sort of like mounting pressure, I think, on them to make this area more successful. We started getting characters like the Mandalorian and Grogu. So Mandalorian and Grogu is not the same timeline as between those two movies. It does not fit, the timelines don't overlap, it doesn't make any sense, and they said, whatever, we cannot deny the success of Mandalorian, we can't just look away from it, we're going to introduce a limited time character meet and greet, which they did, so that was kind of their like first steps in sort of like trying to release the reins around Galaxy's Edge and that protected timeline at Walt Disney World. Obviously they were doing that at Disneyland, no problem. Now here we are, months later, years later, and it looks like Disney has finally given up.
Is this good or bad?
They've given up on this protected timeline. They've given up on trying to make Galaxy's Edge work just as a sequel trilogy, just as the Disney movies. They have basically caved into the pressure and the demands. They are now bringing the original trilogy. Luke, Han, all the gang, Princess Leia, all the fan favorites, Darth Vader, they're bringing that to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. The bad news is, it's only for Disneyland.
What?
For now. I fully expect this to be a testing ground, trying this out in Disneyland, see how it goes, see if it works, see if it brings up interest and more people attending, more merchandise sales. I think if it's successful in Disneyland, we are going to see it over in Walt Disney World at Hollywood Studios. Absolutely gonna happen. So let's talk about the changes that are coming to Disneyland and I believe eventually to Hollywood Studios and Walt Disney World. First, they are splitting the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge land into two areas. The area around Rise of the Resistance with the sort of X-Wing there and the Rise of the Resistance attraction and the shopping and things that are there, they're taking that and they're saying that's gonna stay the sequel trilogy. Makes sense, Rise of the Resistance, the entire attraction is the sequel trilogy. There's no denying that. And then the area around the Millennium Falcon, which has to do with the Smuggler's Run attraction, which can easily be themed, can easily be changed, timelines can be played with, they can have new versions of that. They're bringing a new version of Mandalorian and Grogu already into Smuggler's Run in both Disneyland and Disney World. That whole area around Smuggler's Run and all of the restaurants and the shopping in that entire area, that is all going to be transforming into the original trilogy. So we are going to get to see the Galactic Civil War and the New Republic in those areas, and over in the original areas, you're going to continue to see the Resistance and the First Order. Now, the familiar character meet and greets like the Mandalorian, Grogu, Boba Fett, Luke Skywalker, Ahsoka, and several others will continue to appear in the lands as they have been in Disneyland already, but they are now going to be adding more iconic characters like Darth Vader himself, Princess Leia, and even Han Solo. Of course, Rey will continue. Chewbacca transitions timelines, C-3PO, R2-D2, they all work there as well. But I am so pumped about Darth Vader, Princess Leia, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, all being there and being able to interact with them. I think it's going to be phenomenal. The Walt Disney World version does have a Darth Vader meet and greet already, but it is outside of Galaxy's Edge, and Darth Vader is never inside Galaxy's Edge. He is over at Star Tours. Again, Star Tours much winning the day, absolutely, Darth Vader. So it's going to be exciting to then see Darth Vader in Galaxy's Edge. Another interesting thing is that Vader will then be accompanied by Imperial Stormtroopers. Not the First Order Stormtroopers, which I personally love the look of the First Order Stormtroopers a little bit more than the original Imperial Stormtroopers. But the original Imperial Stormtroopers just have an iconic look, so I can't wait to see them accompanying Darth Vader. So assuming they will be with Darth Vader, First Order troopers will still roam the land over in the sequel trilogy area. This is going to be awesome. Apparently Darth Vader is going to be looking for Luke Skywalker. Luke is going to be roaming the land, seeking knowledge of the Force, looking for artifacts, lightsaber building, all of that sort of stuff. Han and Leia are going to be near the Millennium Falcon trying to recruit people to help Luke, and I am really excited to see how this turns out. Another huge change, which seems small but it is massive, is the music in the land. The music when you enter, the music when you leave, the music that you hear while you're roaming through the lands, all that stuff is going to be changing. Right now, today, the way it works is there's basically these original compositions. There are things that are playing throughout the land that make you feel immersed in the land as though you are actually on Batuu at the Black Spire outpost. Music that you would hear if you were just like a local or somebody traveling through the port. That type, like a music of that era. It's not music that is from the films. So you will now hear John Williams' iconic scores from the original trilogy in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Think about like the main Star Wars title music. Han Solo and the Princess track, the desert and the robot auction, and the Emperor's sort of march music. That is going to be phenomenal. I can't wait. I would assume probably we're going to hear Darth Vader's iconic music when he is sort of marching through the land with his stormtroopers. I can't even. Music is transformative. It is transportative. Is that a word? Like it just elevates the experience, and I am so excited to hear those original scores from those movies. As far as Oga's Cantina goes, again, obviously we have the little robot guy. Our buddy DJ Rex from Star Tours is basically the DJ in Oga's Cantina playing the hits. But apparently we're going to be actually getting the Cantina song from, you think about the Cantina in Star Wars New Hope, we're actually going to get that music at Oga's Cantina. Now, I don't know if this is going to be like in the entry area or the waiting area, or if it's actually going to be playing inside the cantina, but like that iconic cantina music that I've been waiting to hear. When I went to Oga's Cantina for the first time, I was like, man, I hope it's like, the cantina from the movies with the people playing the instruments and that iconic music. When it wasn't, I was like, oh, that's a bit sad. So I'm excited to hear this music be brought in. The timeline of Oga's Cantina is shifting. It is basically when Oga has now opened the cantina. It's a brand new cantina that's been opened. It's not something that's been there for a long time, which is the current storyline. So they're changing that sort of lore behind Oga's Cantina to fit in with that new timeline of the original trilogy. They're going to be changing a lot of the decorations and areas of the land, so a lot of the like cargo and stuff that is in the existing areas that needs to become the original trilogy. The storefront First Order cargo is now going to be transforming into Black Spire Surplus, where they're going to be selling all sorts of things from the original trilogy, historical artifacts, Imperial and Rebel items from the Galactic Civil War. And this store is going to be run by 2 retired clone troopers. So bringing in clone troopers from the prequel trilogy into this that are now retired after the Clone Wars are now over. 2 retired clone troopers are basically going to be running this store. And they are basically Rebel sympathizers. Doc Ondar's Den of Antiquities is going to change to reflect the timeline. Still going to be Doc Ondar's, but it's going to be a little bit different from a timeline perspective. The Droid Depot is going to change to be reflective of an earlier generation of the Mubo family that owns it and runs it. And you're still going to get to see BB-8. You're going to be able to create a BB-style droid in the Droid Depot because it's basically a prototype of a new droid. Because obviously that droid was more popular in the sequel trilogy, probably wouldn't have been as prominent during the original trilogy. They're taking that and saying we have a prototype of this BB, and then you can actually still create them, so they're working that into the timeline. Massive sweeping changes to transform the entire land. I mean, generally it's going to be the same experience. There's no new attraction or anything, but like the fact that they're moving in this direction and they're going to try this gives me hope that Galaxy's Edge can be something more than what it is. It's still going to be difficult because I still want to see like iconic areas from the original trilogy and walk around in them, and that's just not going to happen because you'd have to bulldoze the place. But I think maybe with all these changes and maybe making some changes to Smuggler's Run and giving us some more iconic locations in the actual experience itself, I think that is going to help it quite a bit. I'd love to see that happen. I'm curious what you think. Do you think this is exciting? Do you think this is too little, too late? Do you think it's going to be a dud? Do you think it's horrible and they should have just left it alone? Are you very protective of the timeline and the story? I don't know. I'd love to hear from you. Again, I'm excited for this. If they do it well, I'd love to see it come to Walt Disney World. I think it's going to come to Walt Disney World as long as it's great. So let me know what you think in the comments. Is this the right direction? Are they doing the right thing? Is it about time? Hit me in the comments. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching. Do really appreciate it. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this content. Till I see you next time, the Noble Way is the easy way. Bye-bye, everybody.